Hello and welcome to another video from the Northwest Minnesota Foundation. My name is Carrie Cooper. I'm the communications manager, and I am joined today by Susie Novak. She's from the North Country Food Bank, and she is one of our emergency fund relief grant recipients. So she's joining me today so we can hear a little bit about the work they're doing. So Susie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. If we can start out, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your organization and your service area?
So, I'm the executive director of North Country Food Bank. And up until last January, we were located in Crookston, Minnesota, but we moved to a much larger facility in East Grand Forks, January 31st, 2020.
Wow.
And so, yeah, so
Big
we
move.
moved in,
Yep.
finished setting up, and the pandemic hit.
Oh
That's
my
how we went.
gosh.
So we haven't had a normal day in our new building since we got here.
Bet.
So North Country Food Bank is one of 5 food banks in the state of Minnesota. We cover 21 counties in northwest and west central Minnesota. So basically, if you think about from the Canadian border down to Browns Valley, which is on the west side of the state, but even with the Twin Cities, so that's how far south we go.
Oh, okay.
East is Bemidji and Osakis. So within those 21 counties, we have 220 nonprofit partner organizations that get food from us. Agencies like food shelves, soup kitchens, homeless shelters, senior centers, backpack programs. In order to get food from us, they have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and they can't charge for the food they distribute. So we're kind of, if you think about it, we're the warehouser. We're sourcing donated food nationally, regionally, and locally. We bring that into our warehouse in East Grand Forks, and then we turn around and distribute that out to our agency partners across the 21 counties in northwest and west central Minnesota. What a lot of people don't realize about our work, when I go around and talk to communities across northwest Minnesota, they're like, what you do is really great, but we want to support someone local. And I always tell them, well, we can only have one warehouse. But what they don't realize is our agency partners on the ground getting the food into the hands of people who need it get between 70 and 90% of all the food they distribute comes from our organization.
Nice.
So it's important. It takes both of us. We can't do it without our partners on the ground, and they need us sort of behind the scenes finding the food so they have enough to give out to people who need it.
For sure. All right. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I'm sure COVID-19 has had a big effect on how you do things, but can you just talk a little bit about how, since the start of the pandemic, how has that affected your organization and the clients you serve?
Yeah, it's for us as an organization, it's been very interesting. We know last year we handled 25% more food through our facility than we ever have in the history of our organization.
Wow.
So thank goodness we moved to the larger building before this happened.
Right.
I'm not quite sure we could have pulled it off maybe in our location in Crookston.
Yeah.
We rely heavily on volunteers too. We typically have more than 10,000 hours of volunteer service within our organization. So that was a big hit for us. It was kind of like the culmination. We just moved into a new community. We're starting our volunteer recruitment process. The pandemic hit. Our service became more essential than ever, and we needed to move more food than ever. And now we had less people helping us because there were volunteers. It wasn't acceptable in the beginning. And of course,
Right.
now we've ramped back up where we're starting up our volunteer. We can take groups up to the size of 15 to 20 people right now. We're making it work, but there was a period there where none of that was happening. And at the same time, distribution was increasing tremendously. We went, probably pre-pandemic, we maybe did 2 or 3 mobile distributions a month. And then over the past, 8 or 9 months, we've done 8, 15, depending on the month and the location. It's just been so much more work and, so much more effort to get the food out there as much as we can. We also were very focused on keeping our agency partners open in the communities we serve.
Right.
We knew if they closed down, we were going to have to distribute the food, and we have 10 staff.
Yeah, right.
So our focus was like, we got to keep our partners open so they can work within the communities. And we had a couple of scares where we had some big food shelves say they were going to close down because their volunteer base was very senior oriented, and they, for safety issues, but the communities, we worked within those communities and kept them open. That was our goal from day one, to keep those communities, or each agency in the community open that provided emergency feeding services. And so then, initially we kind of expected a huge increase, but it wasn't right off the bat. For us, I think we were always prepared in our world, in the food bank world, and with Feeding America, that probably we were going to see the biggest influx of need in the fall.
Sure.
There was extra unemployment benefits kind of to start with. People didn't really know. Right away, all our partners saw a big hit on increase in use, but then it kind of stabilized and normalized. But then when August hit, it's gone through the roof. October of this past October, we distributed more in 1 month than we do in a quarter typically.
Oh my gosh.
So we knew from August to December was going to be some of our biggest distribution ever. So it's, unemployment benefits started to run out. Maybe businesses closed and people permanently lost their positions or didn't have as much funding. So it was, we knew the second half of this year was going to be big for us, and it was, so it's going to be, we're still at full speed. There's still tons of food going out of here. We just don't know, month to month what everything's going to bring, or what kind of need people are going to have, but it's not slowing down here yet. We know that.
Yeah, for sure. So, you guys received one of our emergency relief and recovery grants from the Northwest Minnesota Foundation. How do you guys plan to use that grant to support your work and serve the communities that you distribute to?
So for us, it's all about getting more food out there and finding ways to move the food. So we applied for these grant funds to help us coordinate and run more of the mobile distribution throughout the communities in the counties we serve. It takes, it's the logistics of organizing it, finding the locations, getting the volunteers in each community, setting the dates, advertising, marketing it, and then actually distributing the food.
Sure.
And like I said, we have 10 staff.
Yeah.
And we all have more than enough work to do without 15 mobile distributions a month.
Yep.
So we need help. And we don't think this is ever going away. We don't think mobiles went way up and they're going to go back down. We think that's going to be a thing that's going to be part of how we operate in the future. And it's a really good way for us to get the food out there, because we think that we have a pretty good philosophy in how we distribute food, and some food shelves have different philosophies, but our mobile food distributions are always very well attended. We went to one, just as an example, in Roseau, where we thought, based on their service statistics in the community, that there would be maybe 100 to 150 families. So we brought enough food for 300, and there was 600 cars there when we got there. So it's crazy.
It's crazy. Wow.
So these funds are going to help us sort of ramp up that additional food distribution through, just help coordinate and conduct the mobile distribution throughout our service area.
Awesome. Wow. So yeah, very big need that you're able to use these funds for. So obviously, recurring theme is that you've got a small staff and a lot of work to do. Can you, just share with, anybody watching, if someone feels inspired to help out or get involved, how can they do that? Are you able to take people, donating their time, or is it, is a financial contribution the best way to help you guys out? What's the best way for people to lend a hand?
For us, we always say there's three ways that you can really do the most to help us, do the work we need to do and spread our message. Number one, funds. Donating money is huge. We fundraise in order to support our operation. Everybody always thinks we're government funded, and I'm not sure why that is. We're not. We have 2 government contracts to distribute food, but we fundraise, through the generosity of people, organizations like yours, corporations, businesses, churches. That's how we raise enough money to feed people in need. So, and it's really, for us, there's very few organizations, for every dollar you donate, we can provide enough food for 5 meals. So there's
Wow.
not very many places where a dollar can go
Goes
that.
that far, for sure.
So we are, we try to be very good stewards of all the funds we receive, and put all of our, another thing, 96 cents of every dollar donated to us goes straight back into feeding people. There's
Nice.
not a lot of nonprofits that can tout that kind of low administrative costs and
Totally.
have it be so focused on programming. So funding is important. Volunteers are extremely important to our organization. As I mentioned earlier, that kind of dropped off at the beginning of COVID, but we've created a spaced out volunteer line that allows us to still bring in groups now up to 15 to 20 people. Of course, we have a big service area, so we know there's distance to travel, but we do, you'd be surprised. There's schools that will bus kids from, a couple hours away because it's a
Yeah,
really good experience. I mean,
for sure.
nobody comes in here and packs boxes of food and they're like, gosh, I never really understood how this worked, or that kids needed this food for the backpack program, or that seniors needed the food. So it's very worthwhile. You can look us up online, northcountryfoodbank.org, or give us a call. All our information is listed, but we are happy to have groups from the size of 1 to up to 20 right now. When pandemic rules aren't into effect, we can take 50 to 70 people at one time.
Okay. Yeah.
So we can take big groups or small groups. And then the third thing we always tell people is advocacy. Like for us, follow us on social media, subscribe to our newsletter, share and like our stuff that we post on Facebook and Twitter. That helps us get our message out and reach more people so they understand who it is we actually are and what we do and how we're helping across our community.
Awesome. That's great. Is there anything else you want to share, or anything you didn't have a chance to touch on?
I would love to tell you a story about what I experienced this past summer doing mobile distributions. Like I said, we increased them just tremendously. And I'm always so proud of Northwest Minnesota and where we come from and the way people react in a crisis. And so we go into communities with our truck, and there's lines of cars. I mean, like hundreds of cars in line. And this is from small communities to big communities. It doesn't matter. There are cars in line waiting to get food. And this was all happened within the same day, within 2 communities, 20 miles, within 20 miles of each other. But the people here care and are trying to help and want to do stuff to help. So in the first community, a lady, she had to be in her 80s, could barely see over the steering wheel, pulled up to get a box of food. And she said she lived in a senior living apartment complex, and she had 18 neighbors, but she was wondering if maybe, and they all kind of needed help, but she was wondering if maybe she could get like 4 or 5 boxes to take back. And I said, well, I thought you said you had 18 neighbors. And she said, I do. I'm like, well, do they all need the food? And she said, yes. And it didn't take 2 seconds for one of the guys to pull his pickup up, load 18 boxes, and drive them back and bring them all to their doors. And then we went 20 miles away, and this distribution happened to be in a school. There was a lot of teachers helping. It was in the summer, so school wasn't in session, but there was teachers there, and there was kids there for various reasons too. And a bunch of the teachers were volunteering, and a couple of kids came out, and they're like, is this food for anybody? And we're like, yes, absolutely, you can have a box. And they're like, oh, we're on our bikes. And I'm like, the boxes weigh like 40 pounds, and I couldn't see sending a child on a bike with a 40-pound box. I'm like, well, we're going to have to come up with something. And it didn't. There was a teacher, she said, just wait here, pulled her Suburban over, loaded 5 kids in all the boxes they could take, drove them around town, dropped them off at their house, then brought the kids back so they could get their bikes. And I mean, this happens every day when we're out there doing it. And it just kind of just makes you remember why you live here, the way people are willing to help out and do good and make sure that their neighbors don't have to go to bed hungry. And we are so fortunate to work every day where we can help people make sure they have enough to eat.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing those stories, because yeah, it's true. And that's a big reason why we wanted to do this video series, to share these stories and just let people know, there are people out here to help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to look for resources where you can get what you need. This is a very difficult time, and there's no shame in, needing help, where everyone is navigating this pandemic the best we can, and your neighbors want to help and want to support, and organizations like the Food Bank and the Northwest Minnesota Foundation, that's why we're here.
Yes.
So thanks
And we
again.
sincerely appreciate your support with the grant funds. We can't do it without partners like you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me today, Susie. And I'll just wrap up by saying, of course, like she said, if you feel like you can lend a hand, whether making a contribution or helping volunteer with some of their distribution, visit their website. We will provide all that information in the description of this video and wherever we share it online. You can also support more organizations and more impact around the region. If you want to donate to the Northwest Minnesota Foundation, our emergency fund, you can find a link for that when you go to our donation page, because all of that money that we raise through the emergency fund gets granted out to these organizations. So we try to keep all that money local, help out these communities that are doing great work and really serving these critical needs. So thanks again, Susie.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.